Hello and welcome again to Money Tips. This is Charles Kelly, bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money. I've got well over 100 episodes out there on my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher and Anchor, so do check it out. There's a lot of content there, a lot of good, useful money tips that can, as I said, help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money. So I hope you'll be able to check those out. Today we see the introduction of the new immigration system. Well, it's been announced today. It will be phased in, I guess, but it's the new points-based immigration system, which I'll talk about. I should say that many of you might know I'm the author of the book Yes, Money Can Buy You Happiness, which is a book about money and how it can buy you happiness in certain circumstances, and how it can bring happiness to people, and how not having money can make you quite miserable. I also go through tips in there and how to manage your money, how to control your money, how to think about money, how to have the right money mindset so that money doesn't sort of flow through your fingers, slip through your fingers like grains of sand or water, which happens to many people. But many of you might also not be aware that I'm also the author of a book on immigration. Back in 2005-06, I co-wrote a book called How to Come to the UK, and I went through the then system that was in place and told people how they could, excuse me, how they could come to the UK to live, work, study or visit. And at that time I had a business which was involved in helping people come to the UK to mainly for nursing and care work under the old immigration system. Excuse me a second. Sorry. Now, in those days, you could come in from non-EU countries to work as a senior care worker, and that helped the care industry, staff its nursing homes and businesses dealing with care in the home care businesses, and then the EU started to expand into Eastern Europe around about that must have been 2004, where new countries called the A8 countries, which included Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and several other countries that joined the EU, and they were given free movement, but only in Britain, Sweden and Ireland. Germany and France said, no, we're not going to give free movement yet, but they were given free movement, and over 1 million came in the first couple of years to the UK. And then they started to reduce immigration from outside of the EU. So that meant that people coming in from India and the Philippines and Africa were prevented from coming in unless they were highly skilled nurses and could jump through several hoops in English language and that sort of thing. So the market basically changed at that time. But at that time I wrote about it, and I knew, I was very much up to date with all of the rules. Now, later on, under Gordon Brown, brought in a points-based system, which, they're talking about a points-based system today, but they've already got a points-based system, because the system they brought in under the last Labour government, which was around 2008-09, they were phasing it in, a 5-tier points-based system for different levels, like highly skilled workers under work permit type schemes. Then there were low skilled, which they have never activated. Then there was student visas on tier 4. And then there was a tier 5, which was the seasonal workers, seasonal agricultural workers, holidaymaker visas, and different types of visas that are around and were around at those days. So that was a points-based system then. So there's nothing new about a points-based system. The points-based system that's been announced today is pretty similar. It's a tweak on the old points system, which cost billions to introduce, by the way. So I hope they're not going to just scrap those whole system. But the system will now apply to EU workers really from next year. So it now means that people coming in under the EU, this is following the Brexit vote, and the Brexit, which was, let's face it, a lot of people who voted for Brexit were a bit fed up with the amount of immigration coming into the country, and that, you can't argue about that. That's a fact. Because they felt that there were too many people coming in at once. It was uncontrolled, which to a certain extent, you can't control it if you can't control your borders. But now the government have got back control of their borders from next year. So they're now saying, well, if you want to come in, you have to qualify under points, and you have to be at a certain standard that the country needs. And it's basically applying the same rules that have been applied to non-EU workers for decades. They're now applying it to people from within the European Union. So I hope that's clear. In fact, for non-EU workers, it could open up a different kind of market. It could mean that things might become more flexible for non-EU workers, because they won't just be able to sort of just take workers from the EU so easily. Now, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, has announced this today. She's actually the daughter of a migrant family from East Africa who came here. I think they run a pharmacy business in Radlett, and she's risen up to become an MP and a minister, and now she's in one of the top offices in government, which is the Home Office, and good luck to her. She's done very well. Now, she said today that this system will be phased in, and she said that, and when asked the question, well, what about the companies that can't employ low-skilled workers? What about these companies that need care workers? What about these companies that need hospitality workers? And she said, look, there are 8.4 million people between the ages of 16 and 65 who are economically inactive in the UK. And these are the people that need to be trained up to do the jobs. There are also about 5 million people claiming universal credit. Now, not all of those are fully unemployed. Some could be on partial sort of sickness benefits, some could be single parents, some could be working part-time, families working part-time that can't quite make ends meet, so they're on universal credit. There are a lot of people here that could work. The population of the UK is approaching 60 million, and we've got something like 32 million people actually registered working. So there's a lot of people there that can do these jobs. Not all of those people are adults, of course. She also pointed to the fact that there are millions of people already here from the EU which will not be affected by this system. And approximately 3.2 million people have already applied to settle in the UK. These are European Union citizens, mainly from, the countries are Poland, Spain, Italy, Romania, Bulgaria. From these countries, mostly from those countries, 3 million people have applied to stay here. So there should not be a shortage of workers immediately. There'll be less workers coming in, of course, but the other thing you've got to remember is that the country can only thrive any country will only thrive if it takes in skilled workers and skilled migrant workers. And this is the same whether you're in Australia, Canada, America. You can't go to Australia unless you meet certain criteria. And one of the criteria is, do we need that kind of worker? Now, if they need electricians, they'll be getting in electricians. If they need teachers, doctors, lawyers, they'll be opening up the system to attract those people. But they're not going to allow somebody who just comes in who is, didn't finish school properly, who's got no degree, or can't speak English, or has got no skills whatsoever, and just let them go into the country. Now, 50 years ago, yes, you could go to Australia for £10. They call them a £10 POM. POM means it's their so-called affectionate name for British people. They call them pommies, POMs. It's a bit of a racist term, really. But anyway, the £10 POM could go there for £10, whether you were skilled or not, and just because they needed people. They needed to fill this vast country, which still only has a population in the 20 millions or so, and it's vast, isn't it? Now, whatever country you're looking at now will want skilled workers. New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the main places that people migrate to, who have open migration systems. America's a little bit different. They have this green card system, but largely speaking, most countries will want workers that can be employed in good employment, gainful employment, that pay tax, and it can contribute to society and can stand on their own 2 feet. That's what any country wants. And they want people that they need for those jobs that are not going to displace the people who are already doing those jobs or want to do those jobs. So in the UK, I don't think we need particularly more lawyers. There's thousands of people graduating in law every year who can't get a place in the legal profession. but we do need certain types of jobs. So there is a shortage occupation. Medical workers obviously list high on that, but certain kinds of engineers and that sort of thing. But we don't need more drama teachers. And we certainly don't need more people to work making coffee, because the difference between, now some people argue any worker is skilled. Yeah, any worker is skilled, sure. A care worker is skilled, but they're not skilled to the level of, say, a brain surgeon. So there's got to be a higher skilled, a medium skilled, and a lower skilled. It just stands to reason, doesn't it? You know, if you can learn to do a job in 3 or 4 weeks or a month, that's not the same skill level as it is to become a surgeon, which might take 10 or 12 years. So, you know, the country needs those kind of workers, because if you're low skilled and you're working in a basic kind of job, you're making coffee or you're doing a minimum wage type of job, you aren't paying much tax. You're paying hardly anything in tax. The threshold before you even start paying tax is £12,000. So how is that person contributing to the economy? It doesn't make sense. Yeah, they're filling a place in a job, but you know, it's very easy for employers to take somebody who is sitting there and say, well, I'll do the job. Yeah, that's great. That's fine. It helps the employer, but it doesn't really help the country just to fill jobs with low-skilled migrants, because they're not paying tax, and the chances are if they've got a family here and children, they're probably drawing benefits through universal credit. So that's what the government is trying to do. They're trying to get the right people who are needed for the jobs that need doing, and they're just applying the system that was already there for non-EU migrants, and then applying that for EU migrants. So all these people jumping up and down, oh, yeah, what are we going to do? You know, let everybody know this system has just been applied to people. Now, briefly, you can look at this up you can Google this. It will go through in great detail what the system is about. But basically, you need 70 points to come here under the system, under the points-based system. It's very similar to the old system. 20 points will give you, a job offer will give you 20 points at the appropriate skill level. So no, if you're going to email me and say, can I come here, to do a labouring job? No. Can I come here? I'm a barista? No. It's got to be at the appropriate skill level. Even a care worker would not qualify under this type of job, because they don't think that's the appropriate skills level. Whether you think a care worker is skilled or not, I'm saying this is what the government are saying here, and this is based on advice and studies by the Migration Advisory Committee. You get another 10 points if you speak English to the right level, and you would get no points if the salary level is below a certain level. So a salary level of, say, 22,000 a year is not going to give you any points, but a salary level of 25,000 would give you points. You'd also get 20 points for the regular relevant PhD in a STEM, a STEM subject. That's an example, but there are other ways to qualify. They've reduced the minimum salary from 30,000 down to 25,000. So they are trying to make it more flexible, but it's not going to be as open as it was. So speaking English is one thing. Getting an approved job with an approved sponsor. If you're in a shortage occupation, then that would help you qualify even more, because that would fast track you through, as it does now. So if now, for instance, you wanted to come from the Philippines as a nurse and you met the criteria, you could sail through the system and be here very quickly. Of course, you've got to jump through some hoops to show that you're qualified and can adapt here, because we've had scandals in the past where people have slipped through the net and then they've not been properly qualified, and this puts patients at risk. Now, the salary threshold for skilled workers used to be over £30,000. It will now be lowered from that to £25,000, and I expect that will qualify. That will also apply to nurses at the moment who may be earning between £25,000 and £30,000, who want to then settle long term and were a bit worried that they would not be able to get a British passport or get indefinite leave to remain on a salary less than £30,000. The threshold could be as low as 20,480 for specific shortage occupations. So again, they're building in a bit of flexibility, and that could currently include nursing, certain types of civil engineering, psychology, classical ballet dancing. I really can't see how we need more ballet dancers, but there you go. Or those with a relevant PhD, relevant to a specific job, and I expect the PhD would count if you've studied that PhD in specified universities that are on an approved list. So there are already significant shortages of certain types of workers. They still need nurses. There's a big shortage of nurses in the NHS, etc. Now, some people argue, well, foreign workers make up a sixth of the 840,000 strong care workforce. And again, I supplied staff to the care sector, and it was still a shortage even with EU workers coming in. Frankly, EU workers could be more fickle. They didn't always stay in the job as long as somebody did on a work permit. If you had a Philippine on a work permit, they would tend to stick out to their contract until they get indefinite leave to remain, and then some of them still stayed in the job after that. Whereas, say, a nurse from Spain used to come over here and say, well, I don't like the weather, I don't like this, I'm going back to Spain. And this, I'm sorry, Spanish people, this is a fact. They were certainly about 10 times more fussy than the type of work you would get from, say, the Philippines or India, who on a work permit. They would be a lot more willing to work and stick it out through the cold winters than somebody from an EU country that could say, well, I don't like this, or I don't like these long hours, I'm going back to Spain, where I'm unemployed incidentally, but I'm still going back to my family. So there you go. That's a bit about that. Yes, there's going to be a lot of jumping up and down from employers and from relevant bodies saying, look, we need more. I mean, the Royal College of Nursing, for instance, said proposal, which is a union, by the way, said the proposals would not meet health and care needs of the population. British Farmers Union are worried that serious concerns about fruit picking and farming needs. That's true, but they will have different types of seasonal agricultural schemes which they've expanded rapidly to cope with that. So they always had a seasonal agricultural scheme before free movement of labour, by the way, and people would come over here for 6 months and work and then go back. So that's a bit about that. How it will affect the economy? Well, we don't know. In the long run, better workers, more highly skilled workers, coming in and paying more in taxes and contributing more to the economy is good for the economy. Having a lot of low skilled workers in who then are partly dependent on benefits, and I've met them. I've met people who are working in the job but still get benefits because they're working in a garage. And they need social housing. They needed a council house. They're on part-time benefits because he's got 3 kids in the house. And I've seen this myself. They don't benefit the economy. I'm sorry. So you have to accept that. So the government, I think, are doing the right thing, and this will, in the long run, benefit the economy. Now, people say, well, what about the NHS queues? What about this? What about that? But migrants also create demand as well. So it's not just a net. So, well, if we get more workers in and fill that job vacancy, then everything will be okay. No, it doesn't really work like that. Because if you bring in, say, 10,000 workers and you say, right, we're going to put them in a healthcare job, well, those 10,000 workers need a certain amount of care. They need a doctor's surgery to go to. They need housing. So it also creates demand. So the idea that you can just solve all the economic problems by bringing in workers from abroad doesn't really work. We're better off to sort of mechanise and have our industries running efficiently so that we don't need so many workers, and bring in the right workers at the right level so that they are paying taxes. Again, I come back to this point that people on minimum wage hardly pay any tax. So the idea that they're contributing all this billions to the economy is nonsense, because you can't contribute to the economy if you're not paying any tax, can you? If you're not paying tax and you're working on minimum wage in a coffee shop or a cleaning job, and then you've got a family with 3 kids, then you are more likely to be on benefits than net contributing to the system. In any case, it costs 4,000 or 5,000 a year per child to put them through school. People don't even think about that because they don't see the money changing hands. So you've got to get back to reality here, and that's what I think the government are doing. And finally, British workers are often criticised for not wanting to work. I don't think that's true. My kids always worked. They always worked hard. They studied hard, and millions of British workers are probably the hardest working group in the whole of Europe, perhaps in the world. They work very, very hard. They work long hours, but there is a sector of society that just doesn't seem to want to work. There's no doubt about it. There's a sector of society that have for generations in their family not really worked. They're not really studying. They've got no ambition. Now that needs to be addressed. What are we going to do about that? Because if you go through school from the age of 5 to 16 and you come out with a level of English that is not even equivalent to what you'd need a foreign nurse to hold, they wouldn't pass an IELTS exam at level 7, 7.5 because their English is like kindergarten level. So something's not right if these people have been churned out of the school system that either don't have the skills to work, they don't have the skills for further education, and they've got no motivation to work. So something needs to be done about that, because you cannot just leave those people on the scrap heap and then keep bringing in people from Eastern Europe who they have a degree. So I'd rather have someone with a degree from Poland that can come in and do this job that doesn't need a degree, but I'd rather have someone who's highly educated than have someone who's 16 and can hardly speak English, even though he's born and bred in this country. Yeah, but what happens to the 16-year-old then? He's left on the scrap heap? No, you can't have that. Something's got to be done to address this problem. So that's my little rant about the immigration system, and have a look at it online. You can see it all for yourself. It doesn't affect EU workers that are already here. People already here have nothing to worry about. And in fact, I think we'll probably see a large influx of people coming in this year because despite the fact that there's all Brexit, we're not wanted anymore, there's still a lot of people staying here. And if there's work here and there's not work in Lithuania or Latvia, then they go where the work is. And my family, many of my relatives come over from Ireland in the 50s, uncles and aunts, and in the 50s and 60s to work in building, to work in nursing. They made the same journey, but they came here to work because those jobs were needed. So thanks for listening. This is Charles Kelly bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money. Thanks for listening and bye for now. Please feel free to make any comments on Facebook Live. Thanks for tuning in, by the way, to Anthony, James, Bunty, JP, Jane. Thanks for listening, and Joel. Do make your comments and let me know what you think. Thanks for listening and bye for now.